Welcome to Politically Speaking. We are live in studio on a Wednesday night, and it's been a rainy week, and well, that's all good because we're still in April. But thank you for joining us here. We've got two special guests tonight, and this is normally our media panel, but I'm going to welcome one media panelist in right now, Jim Hendry. Nice to have you back in the socially distant studio tonight. And
nice to be here as the. I don't often get to make up a panel all by myself.
Well, you're it, yeah. So we're going to introduce you to our first guest. We will have a second guest at the second half and bring in another special panelist as well. But let's get right down to business because we are really delighted to have someone who has taken some time out of an absolutely crazy schedule to come and spend a bit of time with us to talk about the COVID pandemic and Peterborough Public Health, Dr. Rosanna Salvatierra. Welcome to Politically Speaking.
Thank you.
You know, thank you so much, Dr. Salvatierra. You have been really, I guess, on a weekly basis for more than a year, updating people in Peterborough, communicating with your colleagues throughout the world, I imagine, and trying to help us control this pandemic. And here we are in over a year in. And lots of things are happening and things change on a daily basis. So it's just great to have you here. And this is now, I guess you're going into your 13th year with Peterborough Public Health. Is that correct?
Correct.
And,
yes.
and it's really interesting. Did you ever dream that you would be looking to retirement, which you're going to do in a month or so, and go out with such a nice, smooth transition to retirement?
Well, I don't know if it'll be smooth or not. Certainly a very interesting time before retirement. It's going to make retirement look really, really good.
Well, you know, I've got Jim in the studio, but just tell us as of today, and we're doing this live on April 28th, so things will change as we see repeats over the next few days. Where does Peterborough stand today when it comes to the pandemic? How are our cases doing? Are we seeing a decline? Is there light at the end of the tunnel? What's the current status?
Well, I'm hopeful that potentially we have crested and are on the other side. We have about 80 active cases right now and over 230 high-risk contacts that we're following. But it's pretty volatile. I mean, yesterday we had double digits in new cases, today single digits. When we look at the wastewater surveillance that is being done by Trent University at the treatment plant, we're seeing lots of virus being detected in the sewage, which means that we still have lots of people who are infected here in Peterborough and who are potentially transmitting it to others. So I think, it's certainly not over yet, but I'm hopeful, certainly if you look at the provincial numbers, hopeful that we're starting to be in the decline.
And before I turn it over to Jim, how are we doing provincially? Because I think for a long time, people in the Peterborough region that you cover were looking at other areas and saying, hey, we're not doing too bad. And we sort of got caught up in this next wave. What was the big change that put this big impact in our region?
Well, I mean, typically we do better than the rest of the province, often even better than the average. And that's been great. I think people have worked really hard over the last 15 months to be cooperative and to comply. However, I think what really changed for us was the emergence of the variants of concern. And we had an outbreak here in February with at Severn Court, which was a variant of concern, and it spread throughout the city. We had one death associated with that, a 31-year-old. And then it's really never settled down since then. We've got so much variant here that it spreads so quickly that often by the time we are contacting those high-risk contacts, they're already sick, and they're already transmitting. So we're just trying to get ahead of it. It's been quite a challenge.
Dr. Salvatierra, this just occurred to me as you were speaking. I remember it would have been, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, the whole notion of tracking the bacteria through sewage. And the first reference I heard to it was out of Italy, I think, some researchers. I never thought about it here. When you look at the numbers that come out of the sewage treatment plant, can you tell if that's suggesting that the actual number is higher than it is here?
It's still early days for wastewater surveillance, and it's not an exact science yet, but there does seem to be fairly good correlation between what we're seeing in the sewage and what we then see as far as human cases. So here in Peterborough, it's been very helpful. We're also monitoring. We're monitoring at Trent University, at Fleming, in some retirement homes, and it's been very accurate in picking up infections and predicting potential outbreaks.
Just to follow up on Jim's question, we have some of the best water testing facilities in the world here, and I guess we're taking advantage of that with Trent University. When you have that information and knowledge, what kind of steps can you take to act upon that? And is this something we have that's unique to other communities?
Well, the province is actually funding this type of surveillance throughout Ontario. And so the ministry is involved. We've got academics from several universities. There's lots of interest in it. I think we're just learning how best to use it and what it might be able to do for us in the future. So we're learning as we go, but I've been impressed really by the work from Professor Kyle at Trent University and and just the results they've been able to get. Ideally, we're hoping to get it in real time so that it can help us make decisions about what next steps we might want to take, where else we might want to test, for example.
Is there some place people can see that information, or will it be at some point posted somewhere?
I believe it's on our website.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly we include it in our dashboard at least once a week at our media scrums. We do show the data, at least for the data from the city. We get the data for the other upstream places that are being sampled, but that's more for internal purposes.
The other big story of interest to people, to individuals, is vaccination rates. And I saw today that you did say that sort of it's acknowledged now that vaccines that might have come to Peterborough will be going to hotspots. And I've written about that in the past, and I always thought it was a good idea, and I think it's a good idea, even though you get vaccinated a little slower here, perhaps. Easier for me, perhaps, to say, because I got vaccinated last week. But do you think, to my mind, it took a little long to do that? How does that process, that decision-making process, work?
Well, it's been going on in that since almost beginning. The province was being very strategic about how to allocate the vaccines, and they were assigning about 75% of the allotment to everyone per capita, but they were keeping 25% back and using that for the hot spots and for other, more strategic purposes. But what happened last week is that the science table did some modeling, and I believe you've got the slide that you can show. They looked at, if you had 3 million doses of vaccine to give over 3 weeks or 30 days, what would be the various scenarios and what could you accomplish? And what they found, and I'm not sure if you can put it up on your screen or not, but what they found was that if you stayed versus staying with the status quo, which is shown in the gray bar, if you look at the yellow bar, that's what would happen if you would take 50% of the total provincial allocation and direct it to the hotspots. And they found that whether you look at hospitalizations or ICU admissions in the middle or deaths on the right-hand side, you could reduce that by 45% if you directed 50% of the vaccines to those 115 hotspots. So there was support from all the medical officers of health across the province. I mean, it makes sense, right? To take over the next 3 weeks to really go all out and hit those hotspots hard with vaccine. What it means is that places like Peterborough, we have to wait. We're waiting 3 more weeks before we get our share of that additional Pfizer that's coming to the province. So 3 weeks from now, our allocations of Pfizer will double. In the meantime, it's essentially, we're scheduling according to what we have. We opened up more appointments. We do have, people 60 and over can find appointments. We're now giving appointments to people who are pregnant. Tomorrow we start offering appointments to childcare workers. Special ed teachers are also accessing. We've got the hospital also vaccinating, but we certainly aren't running at full capacity. We won't be able to do full steam ahead until May 17th, when our actual allocation will double.